Almost nothing in wrestling is original anymore, and as we all know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But somehow, through pro wrestling's warped prism, it's also sometimes the first step to improvement. Every act in this list borrowed a concept and took it so far beyond the original idea that they became stars on their own terms, even if the presentation, was somebody else's first. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are the 10 best wrestling rip-offs. Number 10. Demolition. In shoot interviews long after their peak had passed, both Axe and Smash spoke how they'd never made 4 from the 2 and 2 everybody put together when two massive monsters emerged with painted faces, spiked gear and a penchant for pulverizing everybody in their path. In their defense, Animal has since spoken on the subject too, noting that he nor Hawk ever minded the rather similar look on the other side, save for the knowledge and confidence that their own take on the act was the best of the bunch. And within months of the demos debuting, they'd stepped out of that shadow anyway. Demolition were so believable as themselves that the comparisons disappeared in an instant. Instead of thinking about the Road Warriors, fans were made to fear this new act on their own terms. Axe and Smash bulldozed through the opposition, winning the WWE Tag Team Championships 3 times and living up to the tremendous prestige that had been earned by the duos that came before them. And they weren't even the only ones batting back the imposter accusations. Number 9. The Powers of Pain. There can be no greater compliment to the influence of the Road Warriors that 2 acts could so obviously mimic them at the height of their powers and build relatively successful careers with the Formula 2. Barbarian and Warlord shared more than just haircuts and painted faces in the mid-1980s. They were massive bastards that looked believable, battering folk. While Demolition became something of an intra-promotional dream match for Hawk and Animal, the Powers of Pain were there as doppelganger foil. Fortunately, they were able to learn very quickly about the benefit of borrowing from the very best, and the two looked great, put over their superiors, and eventually found their way to WWE in 1988. A babyface run was the natural way to go, thanks to the dominance of the pre-existing tag team champions Demolition, but a double turn at the 88 Survivor Series resulted in the feud taking place with the teams on opposite sides and working against one another at both WrestleMania and the Survivor Series again in 1989. Their 1990 split highlighted how easy it was to transition them into wildly different gimmicks, but they certainly made the best of what others might have considered a bad situation. Number 8. Black Machismo. This was born of some bloody excellent patter, and ultimately it died the same way. Jay Lethal's obvious talents were unfortunately getting lost in the X Division shuffle during the heyday for the league in TNA, all until the Kevin Nash-led Paparazzi Productions gave him the opportunity to reveal one of his wonderfully bizarre boy poppers in front of the cameras. He did a sodding amazing Randy Savage. I mean, really amazing. It put Lethal on the map like never before, but unfortunately, TNA's overexcitement in going all the way with the tribute booted his golden opportunity clean into the sea. Forcing through the Randy Liz romantic angle with Machismo and SoCal Val, the company booked a SummerSlam 91 adjacent wedding that then led to a feud between Lethal and Sonjay Dutt over Val's affections. It was schlocky crap that sucked the charm out of an otherwise loving tribute to a legend. Number 7. JBL. It was always felt that the Ted DiBiase character earned such prominence because Vince McMahon had at long last been able to turn his own persona up to 11 and put it in the body and glitzy suit of a cartoonish pro wrestler. With that in mind, was John Bradshaw Layfield's 2004 reinvention an updated take on the $1 Million Man, or a contemporary spin on the even louder-mouthed version of himself McMahon had become? The cars, suits and lifestyle choices Layfield made during his divisive run as WWE Champion mirrored much of DiBiase's 80s audaciousness, but replaced the pantomime villainy of Reaganism with an altogether meaner streak. This seems true of McMahon as well, who luxuriated in his pro wrestling monopoly so much that by 2003 it was nearly impossible to see where his on-screen persona ended and the man behind Mr. McMahon began. Regardless of all that, the JBL gimmick was at long last the lump of crap thrown at a wall that actually stuck for the former APA man, gifting him nearly a year as SmackDown's top star and a career WWE has since generously labelled worthy of their Hall of Fame. Number 6. The Rockers. As young upstarts that suited the look far more than those they borrowed so much of it from, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty didn't so much feel like rip-offs as the final composite form of two iconic double acts from the years prior. The Midnights and Rock and Rolls had electric chemistry together during their 1980s rivalry, and it was that in-ring spark Jannetty and Michaels borrowed and refined, applying it so liberally in the AWA that they were quickly spotted, signed, and pushed by WWE in 1988. Looking younger than Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson and exhibiting more athletic prowess than every version of the Midnight Express, the Rockers made so much more sense for Vince McMahon's polished product. That they split without winning tag team gold never hampered their long-standing legacy as one of the all-time great double acts either. They're remembered fondly as pioneers, even if much of the aesthetic was carefully cribbed along the way. Number 5. Kane. Kane had to be a rip-off to make any kind of sense, but few could have predicted the staying power of a man brought in to mimic and improve upon the actions, powers and theatrics of his storyline sibling. Undertaker's Monster of the Week feuds had kind of run out of juice by 1995, with programs opposite Mankind and Shawn Michaels over the following years highlighting how important fresh rivals were for the evolution of a dead man gimmick that had strayed dangerously close to becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Big Red Machine existed in canon nearly 6 months before he ripped the door off the new Hell in a Cell structure, but WWE's decision to present him as somebody even more terrifying than Undertaker himself ensured that the package lived up to the billing. The Tombstone, Chokeslam, control of the lights and assorted other magic powers were familiar, but this terrifying spin on it was brand spanking new. It informed not just this one WrestleMania-ready feud, but much of Kane's remarkable successes in the years that followed, not concessions Kane. Number 4. Sting. There's a lot to enjoy from going back and watching Sting's transition from heart-on-sleeve WCW lifer to iconoclastic loner in 1996, particularly in how his look shifted from the last vestiges of the surfer act to the era-defining aesthetic that became his calling card. Crucial to its completion was Scott Hall, and not just because he was one of the men stood on the opposite side of the ring every time Sting hit it. Hall was actually the one who suggested taking inspiration from the Crow look included. In the 1994 film, Brandon Lee's Crow exerts a campaign of revenge as a vigilante, decked out in mostly black with the relatively expressionless white face paint to boot. He's neither a man of the law nor man of the people in this moment, but operating for himself for a greater good. This suited Sting's motivations to a T, particularly in the exceptional early stages of the New World Order angle, and especially due to the colour scheme matching theirs rather than the WCW group after almost a year of watching from the rafters. Number 3. Ric Flair. Beyond the magic he created bell to bell for decades, all the aesthetics that made Ric Flair Ric Bloody Flair were a zoom and enhance job on the career of the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Pictures of Flair in his original incarnation show a brown-haired, bulky powerlifter type about as far away from the man that became the man. But adopting Rogers' look, nickname moves, and even the signature strut helped him elevate in the eyes of the audience and the National Wrestling Alliance. Time and exposure has given him the legacy of the definitive Nature Boy, if not the first. Should there ever be a Nature Boy again, as was the case post-Flair with Buddy Landel, they'll almost certainly compared first and foremost to Slick Rick. Such was the level of stardom and acclaim he garnered with the gimmick and his amazing work for the NWA in the 1980s. Number 2. Hulk Hogan. Realistically, there are few performers as influential to the landscape of North American wrestling as superstar Billy Graham, not least because of the man most tied to his traits. Several wrestlers very obviously aped Graham's words, look, physique, and even limited in-ring style. Scott Steiner, Jesse Ventura, Don Morocco, Dusty Rhodes, and even the Ultimate Warrior all owe much to the package the superstar put forth. But Hulk Hogan took something that could have been perceived as a tribute act and turned it into a cultural movement. From the biceps to the brothers and the pythons to the relentless and chaotic patter, Hogan's whole presentation turned Graham's effort up to 11 at a time when America was more than ready for the amount Vince McMahon Jr. was about to smush it into their faces. Hulkamania was an impeccably branded movement orchestrated by promoter and performer in perfect harmony, but the template for the persona was laid out by a former WWE champion almost a decade earlier. Number 1. Bullet Club. There was a lot to enjoy about Triple H losing his patience with the modernised Too Sweet chants when D-Generation X were inducted into the 2019 Hall of Fame. The miserable old bastard didn't think it was as cool as the DX or NWO's take on it, and though he's entitled to that opinion, a pissant promotion built off the back of it strongly suggested that he was in the minority. Bullet Club did everything for the cheapest possible heat in New Japan, so much so that when comparisons to the mass beatdowns by the NWO were made, it was foolish not to steer into it. In the same way DX copied some of Nash and Hall's homework with a few intentional changes, Bullet Club lifted the aesthetic for their shirts and taunts for shits and giggles. Younger fans loved it in a way many of them hadn't loved WWE ever before, aiding an independent wrestling boom that assisted in the birth of AEW. No wonder the Clique's designated driver got so pissy about it. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, and you can find me at Adam Wilborn. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.